The shadowy hand, unmasking Turkey's Üst Akıl conspiracy. The air in Turkey often hums with whispers of a hidden force, an unseen hand guiding events, shaping destinies. This pervasive sense of a grand design, orchestrated by malevolent actors, coalesces around a powerful concept, Üst Akıl. Translated as mastermind, metamind, or supramind, this term denotes an alleged ubiquitous, omnipotent, and invisible external power, often ambiguously linked to the government of the United States, working in concert with internal collaborators. Its sinister objective, as widely believed within Turkey, is to weaken, destabilize, or even dismember the nation. The concept of Üst Akıl has risen to significant social and political prominence in Turkey, particularly since its first widespread use in 2014. Its influence is palpable in public discourse, frequently invoked by prominent political figures, including President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who often attributes various crises to this supreme mind and its continuous targeting of the Turkish nation's will. The very ambiguity surrounding the precise identity of this mastermind is a crucial element that enhances its political utility and resilience. Unlike a specific verifiable entity that could be directly refuted, the vagueness of Üst Akıl allows it to encompass a wide array of perceived adversaries. These range from specific non-state actors like the Salafi jihadist Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, ISIL, the Kurdistan Workers' Party, PKK, and the Islamist cult around Fethullah Gulen, to broader, more abstract entities such as the West or the U.S. government. This inherent flexibility enables Üst Akıl to function as a grand, adaptable conspiracy framework, capable of absorbing and explaining new, disparate events under a single, overarching narrative. This adaptability is central to its enduring influence and its remarkable resistance to critical examination. Furthermore, the very nomenclature of Üst Akıl, implying a metamind or supramind, elevates the alleged orchestrator beyond ordinary human capacity, imbuing it with an almost mythical, all-powerful quality. By suggesting a level of coordination and intentionality that transcends national borders, the Üst Akıl becomes a force that is not merely powerful, but seemingly supernatural and inescapable. This mythic dimension makes it particularly compelling in a society where unquestionable, godly storytelling can deeply resonate. This framing shifts the discourse from a rational, evidence-based discussion to one rooted in belief and existential struggle, thereby rendering it less susceptible to conventional critical analysis. This pervasive belief system is not a recent invention. Its roots lie deep within Turkey's historical anxieties, particularly those stemming from the early 20th century. The bedrock of Turkish conspiracism is undeniably the profound historical trauma associated with the Treaty of Sèvres. Signed in 1920, this punitive treaty was imposed on the defeated Ottoman Empire after World War I, aiming to partition vast territories among victorious Western powers and even establish new independent states for Armenians and Kurds. Although the Treaty of Sèvres was ultimately never ratified or implemented, being superseded by the Treaty of Lausanne in 1923, which established the modern Turkish Republic, its symbolic impact on the Turkish national psyche was monumental. It came to represent the epitome of external and internal existential threats for the nascent Turkish Republic's political elite, fostering a deep-seated siege mentality, a persistent perception of being perpetually encircled by enemies attempting the destruction of the Turkish state. This enduring belief is known as the Sèvres syndrome. It is not merely a historical memory, but an active lens through which contemporary threats are interpreted. The treaty, though a phantom treaty, instilled a profound reflex of fear and dread of betrayal among Turks. This means that any perceived threat, whether internal dissent or external pressure, can be immediately mapped onto this narrative of an ongoing plot to dismember Turkey. This historical anxiety provides fertile ground for contemporary conspiracy theories like Üst Akıl, linking current events to a long-standing narrative of victimhood and external malevolence. The Sèvres syndrome's development can be traced through distinct stages. Initially, it manifested as an immediate fear and anxiety among the Republican elite. Over time, various political actors, including the powerful Turkish military, actively contributed to its reproduction and perpetuation. Eventually, it became institutionalized and radicalized, particularly as ultra-nationalist parties sought to systematically exclude perceived enemies from the Turkish body politic. This historical anxiety continues to be a significant determinant of Turkish foreign policy, influencing the nation's approaches to complex issues such as the Kurdish conflict, its long-standing ambition for European Union accession, and the international recognition of the Armenian genocide. A disturbing facet of the Sèvres syndrome is its strong undercurrent of anti-Semitism, with some narratives directly blaming the treaty on a supposed Jewish conspiracy. This extends to the perception of Turkish Jews and other minorities, who are often cast as alien elements or local puppets of foreign powers, thereby excluded from the very definition of the Turkish nation. This progression demonstrates how a geopolitical fear can be twisted to foster internal divisions and justify exclusionary policies, reinforcing a paranoid mistrust that poses significant challenges for a diverse society. The active instrumentalization of this historical anxiety by political elites to generate paranoia and consolidate support illustrates how historical narratives are not merely remembered, but strategically deployed for domestic political gain. The survival of the syndrome and its tactical exploitation by elements within the government system are indeed indicative of obstacles to Turkish democracy. The prevalence of conspiracy theories in Turkey is further shaped by a unique phenomenon: state-centric conspiracism. Unlike many other nations where conspiracy theories often target the state, in Turkey, the alleged command and control end of a conspiracy is frequently narrated to be governments themselves. This suggests a deep historical and cultural embedding of conspiratorial thinking within the very fabric of the state. The power of conspiracism to shape intellectual discourse and represent the state tradition is considered unique to Turkey by scholar Doğan Gürpınar. This top-down mechanism means that the state, particularly the ruling Justice and Development Party, AKP, actively leverages and propagates these narratives as a tool of governance. It transforms conspiracism from a marginal phenomenon into a regular and essential aspect of mainstream politics. This is a causal relationship where state actors exploit societal predispositions for political gain, using conspiracy theories to legitimize a political motive, to delegitimize dissident views, to make an assertion of difference, to safeguard political status, and to gain mainstream recognition. A significant contributor to this state-centric worldview is the Turkish education system, which is massively focused on the state. This educational emphasis can foster a mindset where external threats and internal conspiracies are readily accepted as explanations for national challenges. Beyond institutional influences, several sociological and psychological factors also contribute to the population's susceptibility. Turkish author Mustafa Akyol suggests that conspiracy theorizing allows Turks to feel important and special if the world is conspiring against them, serving as a psychological compensation for lost Ottoman grandeur. A nation that has experienced a perceived decline from a powerful imperial past might find psychological solace or a renewed sense of significance in believing it is important enough for global powers to conspire against it. This externalizes blame for internal challenges or perceived national failures, reinforcing a collective sense of national pride, albeit through victimhood. This underlying psychological need makes the population highly receptive to conspiratorial narratives that confirm their sense of importance on the global stage. The information environment in Turkey further exacerbates this susceptibility. The country exhibits a low level of media literacy and low reading scores, rendering its population particularly vulnerable to fake news. This is compounded by low media freedom and low societal trust. When citizens lack the critical skills to evaluate information and operate in an environment where independent media is constrained, they become highly vulnerable to misinformation. Furthermore, low societal trust means they may be less inclined to believe official, non-conspiratorial explanations or independent analyses. This vacuum is then filled by state-amplified conspiratorial narratives, which simplify complex realities and offer comforting, albeit false, explanations. This creates a self-reinforcing loop where the lack of critical information consumption fuels the spread of conspiracism. Academic studies also indicate that outgroup mistrust and psychological reactance, a measure of nonconformity, are significant predictors of conspiracy beliefs in Turkey, with Turkish participants showing higher scores in these areas compared to the UK and US. The theoretical underpinnings of Turkish conspiracism, rooted in historical anxieties and societal predispositions, have been actively exploited by political actors, particularly the ruling Justice and Development Party, AKP, to achieve specific objectives. This strategic deployment of the Üst Akıl concept has become a defining feature of contemporary Turkish politics. Since its initial widespread use in 2014, the Üst Akıl concept has been strategically adopted by a broad spectrum of political factions in Turkey, including Islamist, nationalist, Kemalist, leftist, and social democratic groups, achieving widespread acceptance in Turkish media between 2016 and 2019. It functions as a versatile enabling device to legitimize political motives, delegitimize dissident views, assert difference, safeguard political status, and gain mainstream recognition. The AKP, a right-wing conservative party, has been central to this trend, consistently employing conspiracy charges to explain numerous social events, beginning with the Gezi Park protests in 2013. This strategy aims to solidify its voter base by creating a clear we versus others dynamic within an increasingly polarized society, thereby fostering a conspiratorial climate. The adaptability of the Üst Akıl concept allows it to be consistently invoked across a diverse range of political and economic crises, simplifying complex issues into a clear us versus them narrative. This chameleon-like quality makes it an indispensable tool for political actors to justify government policies, discredit opposing viewpoints, and assert political legitimacy. It simplifies complex realities into a clear, emotionally resonant narrative, hindering nuanced public debate and consolidating power. The Gezi Park protests of 2013 serve as an early example of this instrumentalization. The Turkish government reacted to these environmentalist demonstrations by asserting they were orchestrated by a secret foreign power, specifically the interest rate lobby, faiz lobisi. This narrative effectively branded the protesters as looters or vandals. This framing established a precedent for blaming foreign powers for domestic dissent and laid the groundwork for the later, more encompassing Üst Akıl narrative. Academic analysis confirms that individuals interpreted these government-propagated conspiracy theories in line with their existing values and interests. The failed coup attempt of July 2016 provided an even more significant opportunity for the strategic deployment of Üst Akıl. In the aftermath, the concept became a pivotal tool for the pro-AKP media to justify government policies, discredit opposing viewpoints, and assert political legitimacy. President Erdogan explicitly blamed the Gülen movement, designated as a terrorist organization, FETÖ, for orchestrating the coup, and openly accused the United States of harboring Fethullah Gülen. He famously declared, "Turkey will not be run from a house in Pennsylvania." The Supreme Mind was directly blamed for organizing coups and relentlessly targeting the will of the Turkish nation. Erdogan asserted that figures like Gülen were merely pawns with a Supreme Mind above him. The strategic use of Üst Akıl is deeply intertwined with the rise and maintenance of populist authoritarian rule in Turkey. Erdogan's political rhetoric, characterized by an anti-elitist stance and a narrative of victimhood, positions him as the voice of the oppressed masses against a corrupt elite. The Üst Akıl provides the perfect, all-encompassing, corrupt elite to rally against, both domestically and internationally. This us versus them binary is a core characteristic of populism and allows the government to consolidate its voters while simultaneously deflecting direct responsibility for economic hardships or other domestic failures. This demonstrates a fundamental ideological underpinning for consolidating and legitimizing authoritarian power. The Üst Akıl narrative also effectively blurs the lines between external threats and internal dissent by consistently portraying domestic opposition as internal collaborators or pawns of the external mastermind. The definition of Üst Akıl explicitly includes internal collaborators. This allows the government to label diverse domestic opponents, such as the Gülen movement or even political opposition parties, as agents of this external force. This rhetorical strategy demonizes dissent, framing it not as legitimate political opposition, but as treasonous collaboration with an existential enemy. It justifies crackdowns, purges, and the suppression of civil liberties by presenting them as necessary measures against a unified, insidious threat to national survival. The concept is also invoked in the face of economic crises, with Üst Akıl blamed for destroying economies. Erdogan's rhetoric often features strong, threatening language, accusing the opposition of sinking the economy through protests and boycotts. This frames economic hardships as external attacks rather than internal policy failures. In foreign policy, the Üst Akıl narrative serves to justify controversial decisions and military interventions. S-400 purchase, 2019. The acquisition of the Russian S-400 missile system was framed as essential for national defense necessity and national pride against external threats and conspiracies. Pro-government actors attacked opponents and amplified anti-American sentiment, claiming the S-400 was merely an excuse for U.S. sanctions, with the real reason being Turkey's growing defense industry. Syria operations, Euphrates Shield Olive Branch Peace Spring, Turkish military operations in northern Syria commencing in 2016 were presented as necessary to neutralize terror threats, PKK, YPG, which Turkey views as extensions of foreign plots to undermine its borders. Libya intervention, 2020. Turkey's military intervention was justified as securing access to resources and maritime boundaries in the eastern Mediterranean, the Blue Homeland Doctrine, and countering regional influence, often framed as part of a larger struggle against external forces. Eastern Mediterranean disputes. Ongoing disputes with Greece and Cyprus over maritime boundaries and energy resources are frequently framed through the Sevr syndrome lens, portraying Turkey as defending its national interests against those seeking to dismember it. The global perception of Turkey's Üst Akıl conspiracy stands in stark contrast to its pervasive influence within the country. Outside of Turkey, awareness of this specific conspiracy theory is limited, and existing news and academic analyses tend to be critical and analytical rather than endorsing its claims. Academic critiques consistently analyze Üst Akıl not as a factual reality, but as a pragmatic political tool. Scholars view conspiracy theories as a regular and essential aspect of mainstream politics in Turkey, used pragmatically by political actors rather than as marginal phenomena employed by extremists. Academic studies delve into the sociological and psychological factors that contribute to Turkish conspiracism, identifying the Sevr syndrome as a fundamental predictor of these beliefs. Critical discourse analysis further examines how these narratives are constructed and employed to maintain hegemonic discourse and manage collective anxiety within society. Western media outlets, such as The Economist, BBC, The Washington Post, and The Guardian, generally adopt a critical stance towards President Erdogan's government, consistently reporting on its human rights record, curtailment of public freedoms, and perceived authoritarian tendencies. In response, Turkish pro-government media and officials frequently accuse Western media of biased reporting, engaging in defamation campaigns, and even being part of a global conspiracy aimed at undermining Turkey's influence. Some Western outlets have in turn been accused of inadvertently providing space for conspiracy theories or distorting events in their coverage. The Turkish media environment itself plays a significant role in this dynamic. It is characterized by heavy censorship, rising public distrust, and increasing fragmentation along partisan lines. While pro-government media outlets, despite being the least trusted by a significant portion of Turks, are still regularly consumed, this suggests a public that consumes state-sponsored narratives, perhaps due to limited access to independent sources or habit, but often with a degree of skepticism. This pervasive mistrust often pushes citizens towards online and social media, which, while offering alternative viewpoints, can also be fertile ground for misinformation. This split media ecology complicates the construction of truth, where nothing is what it seems. The government's extensive control over national media, estimated at 85% by 2018, is a critical factor. This control allows for the systematic dissemination of pro-government and conspiratorial narratives while suppressing critical voices, thereby creating a vulnerable information ecosystem. The immediate dismissal of Western media criticism as part of a global conspiracy or defamation campaign effectively neutralizes external critiques by framing them as evidence of the very conspiracy it alleges. When Western media outlets criticize Erdogan's government for human rights abuses or authoritarian tendencies, Turkish officials respond by accusing them of targeting our country and our president with lies and slanders and linking it to a global conspiracy. This is a strategic rhetorical maneuver. Any negative reporting from the West is immediately reframed as proof of the Üst Akıl at work, seeking to undermine Turkey. This makes it incredibly difficult for external actors to engage constructively or for internal dissent to gain legitimacy, as all criticism is subsumed under the master narrative of an external plot. The significant divergence between how Üst Akıl is used and perceived within Turkey's political sphere and how it is analyzed by international academia highlights a fundamental gap in understanding. While Turkish political actors pragmatically deploy Üst Akıl to justify policies and consolidate power, academic literature consistently treats it as a political tool, a phantasmatic narrative that simplifies socio-political space and manages collective anxiety. This stark contrast underscores that outside Turkey, the theory is not taken as a factual reality, but as a subject of critical scholarly inquiry into its function and impact on Turkish society and politics. This provides the critical backbone for understanding the phenomenon, contrasting the claimed reality of the conspiracy with its analytical function. The narrative of Üst Akıl in Turkey is a complex tapestry woven from historical anxieties, deep-seated state-centric conspiracism, and the strategic political instrumentalization of a pervasive belief system. This adaptable and all-encompassing conspiracy theory serves as a powerful tool for the ruling elite to legitimize policies, delegitimize opposition, and consolidate power by fostering an us versus them dynamic within an increasingly polarized society. The Sevres syndrome provides the initial deeply ingrained mistrust. Political elites then instrumentalize this historical trauma to explain contemporary events, from the Gezi Park protests to the 2016 coup attempt and economic crises. This, in turn, deepens societal polarization and mistrust, making the population even more susceptible to future conspiratorial narratives that reinforce the us versus them binary. This feedback loop makes it increasingly difficult to break free from the cycle, impacting democratic processes and social cohesion. While primarily a domestic tool for political consolidation and control, the Üst Akıl narrative has tangible and profound international consequences, shaping Turkey's foreign policy and its relationships with global powers. The framing of foreign policy decisions like the S-400 purchase or military operations in Syria and Libya through the Üst Akıl lens directly influences Turkey's international behavior.